Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the good work you're doing. This is how the kingdom of God was built in the biblical days, meeting in small groups like this to encourage each other. And also we've been told that as we see the day approaching, we should encourage each other. So I think it's a good work. So keep it up, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much. We will do it in a form of a discussion, or more or less a forum. I will be asking some few questions as you try to address them, and then in between, our audience can also raise their hands through the reaction, or maybe on their microphone, and then they can also ask their question. So to start with, I have the first question. I would like us to know, what does the term work-life conflict means? What are the causes? And from the individual, family, organizational levels, how do you handle this?
So maybe let's start by trying to understand what work means. And as a woman, I would want to first of all clarify that when we say work, mostly sometimes we think about only paid employment. But as women, we have this work we also do, which is called housework. That is just giving something of value that people really need, but this is not considered as work. So kudos to all women on the platform, and any other woman who is working at home, though not paid, it's more than the paid employment. But what we are working with now, or what we will discuss now, we're talking about work that is paid employment. And work is important for us because we now want to understand work, and then we understand life. Work is important for us because it has what we call latent and manifest functions. That is the psychological, and then the physical functions we know about work. That is, we go to work to get money. We make money, and we need the money to make ends meet. Then we have the latent functions, which are the functions that psychologically we crave for, in terms of maybe you go to work and you have the social relationships, you have people you meet there, you get into contact with them, and then work also gives you what we call a time structure. So from 8 to 5, you have something to do with your life. You will not understand this, so you ask somebody who is unemployed, and the person will tell you that 8 to 5 in the evening, from 8 in the morning to 5 in the evening, it is difficult to find things to fit into this time. Let's also think back on COVID, when we went to a lockdown. It was stressful because then you are locked up at home all day. So work has these psychological functions it provides for us, and it provides also fulfillment. Life means that if you are married, life for you is family, okay? Like children, wife. Even if you are not married, life is the other relationships you have apart from work, which could be your extended family, which could be mother, father, etc. So work life, this is what it means. And then we look at conflict. Conflict is anything that disturbs your normal functioning in life. So when we say work-life conflict, it means that now you have an imbalance. That means that things that are at work may be stressing you also at home. On the individual level, you asked, it will be that you have not made time to really learn how to do certain things at work. So you are found wanting. That shortfall can bring some sort of imbalance at work. You are not somebody who structures your time as an individual. You are not somebody who has emotional intelligence. Means that all the small stuff, you deal with it and you are angered. You are not able to work on your own emotions and other people's emotions. The organizational level, it will be just bad teamwork. People at work who are just stressing you. There's work to do, and there's a teammate who is always the lazy one, social loafing, would enjoy the benefits of the performance but will not join you to work. All right, then we come to the family. It could be financial strain at home. It could be stress with a spouse. It could be children who are sick. It could be anything. So on these three levels, conflict can arise. So these are some of the ways in which you can have work-life conflict, and I've explained the two concepts.
Wow, this is just very deep. I like it. Especially looking at the conflict, I've written some few things you said. Unstructured timing, bad teamwork, from colleagues, social loafing, and even financial problems can even bring this conflict in your work-life balance. I just like this. Right. Let me go to the next question. Except maybe somebody else has something to say, you can interrupt me. But then let me ask, what are the causes? You've mentioned some few conflicts here, right? Now let's look at it from the individual point of view. And then if you can maybe then go on to the family side and then come to the organizational level, please. So please start with the individual level.
All right. So I try to brush on it a little bit. But one thing I want to say is that this spillover, spillover either from work and then home, it can result in what we call crossover. It is a positive spillover. If you are promoted at work, you come home, you're excited, and then the family rejoices. The same way, if something happens at work that you are not comfortable with or it stresses you, you come home and then it results in what you call a crossover, which means that you come home and then you take it out on her spouse, your kids, you are shouting. Sometimes something will happen at home, and then that spillover goes to work, and then now it's a crossover. A subordinate who has not done anything, you're shouting at the person. So these are some of the ways. Now, in terms of you, the individual, I want to talk about maybe the work a little bit. Role ambiguity. Something like what you're supposed to do. There are workplaces where sometimes you are reporting to 2 people before the final person. And therefore, these reporting relationships can create stress. You said something or an order is given from the top, and by the time the person communicates it to you, it becomes ambiguous, and then you work with it and it's a problem. Or you are in a job and sometimes you don't know when you'll be laid off, or you are not secured in the job. This insecurity you would not know, but can indirectly also affect you. Sometimes even the change in work conditions. We had to move during COVID. Some people had to go virtual. That means you work from home. Not working with the normal things you know and now having to work from home can cause problems. If I come to the family level, and another thing I want to mention here, sometimes even a simple thing like noise, where you are in a place, maybe you are living in an environment where I know how Berlin is, and sometimes you live close to the train tracks or something. Even that one can be a source of stress at a particular time of the day for you. You will not notice, but it can stress you. So, and another thing is maybe the time you stay maybe in Zehlendorf, and then you have to go all the way to the other side of Berlin to go to work. That can be a source of stress. You would not know. By the time you get to work, you are very stressed. And sometimes we don't realize all these things come into play. So in terms of your psychological attitude, if it's at work, you may get depressed, you are not involved, you have things like accidents. Because we say accidents happen because of unsafe conditions and unsafe acts. You are stressed, and then you find out your behaviors, you have accidents. Sometimes people go into substance abuse, people will be absent at work, or we have what we call presenteeism. They will be at work, present there, but they are not working. The worst part of it is your decision making is also affected. When it happens at home, where maybe I've had issues where you have spouses who are not in agreement with each other, and then it spills over to work, you find that ordinarily a spouse who is a very hard worker or a high performer at work, because of these things happening at home, the person's performance begins to slack. So I would just say this briefly, and then as we go on, from when we get into stress, we will see or hear more of some of the physical strains it has on the individual. Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you very much. This really sounds very, very, something we need to really keep in mind and then also work. I didn't know that stress, these causes are coming from these different areas which you have mentioned. what really strikes my mind right now is the one you spoke about, depression. You know, depression. I didn't know that depression could come as a result of this imbalance between work and life. Wow. All right. So I'm writing them down. I don't know if anybody wants to ask any question in relation to what we have discussed so far. But please, if you have a question, you can either type it, or you can raise your hand, or just interrupt me, and then you can ask your question. Right. In the meanwhile, we'll go on to the next question. As you have said, there are many outcomes of work-life imbalances. But then one thing I want us to talk today is on stress. You know, we've heard of stress can be good or bad. What is stress, if you can define that for us in the first place? And then we'll look at it further. So please, let's talk about stress.
All right, so stress. It's like, I want us to imagine, it's like you're putting pressure on something. I know people who've had experiences with COVID will tell you, they said sometimes like something is sitting on your chest. Stress is a pressure, something that is pressurizing you, okay, putting a stress or a strain on you. It is a feeling that comes when something is bothering you. Sometimes you can't place a finger on it. But what I want to say here is that it is not the situation that is the stress, not a caution. Sometimes it's our reaction to, not sometimes, it is our reaction to the situation that causes stress. So the situation, the events that causes stress are the stresses. The stresses are not the issue, but how we react to this stress is the issue. But you see, when you look at the stress curve, a little bit of stress is good for life. There are people who, when there's too little stress in their lives, they are very inactive. We say they are laid back. They don't do anything. I have a colleague who will tell you, no, he needs the pressure, then he can move. A little bit of stress is okay. Maximum or optimum stress is good. I mean, you work on your normal level, your normal pace of life, you are not fatigued, and that is okay. But when there's too much stress, so the good stress, that is when you are working on your optimum level, we call it eustress, E-U-S-T-R-E-S-S. That is good stress because it pushes you to do better. Then when you get to that stage where it is overload, then you are having what we call distress. That's the bad stress. You are exhausted. Many times you feel like I can't take it anymore. You are overloaded. Then you begin to have the panic, anxieties, you're angry, you are breaking down, then you go to burnout. So burnout is the stage we have to try very hard not to get to. But that is a stage where depression comes in, panic attacks, anxiety. And if you don't take care, you break down, you can't do anything. We have the story of the prophet in the Bible who just went to hide and said, God, kill me. So that is the stage where if you don't take care, you get to that stage, it is a problem. Okay, so the stress response cycle, how we respond to stress, I've said, is the issue. You get into a difficult situation, then you see that you are stressed, then adrenaline just sets in. Then is a fight or flee response comes in. Your heart begins to pound. You get out of breath. Your muscles tighten up. Then now you get into that stage where if you don't take care, you are immobilized. I want us to know that we experience the outcomes or causes of stress in 4 ways: your body, your mind, your emotions, and your behavior. Some of the things about the behavior, we've already said, we become more accident prone. There are times that you realize that people say it rains because a problem rains on. Somebody who is bereaved or has lost a loved one, then that's the time the person gets into an accident. Because now you become stress prone, you are accident prone. And let me jokingly say that for the married couple, work and life, the behavior of stress on your family life, it can be sometimes loss of sex drive, sleeplessness, you are restless, If it's about drinking, those who take alcohol, if it's just a normal alcohol, a little glass of wine, now you find that if you don't take care, you are going overboard. Emotions, you're always anxious, a bit fuzzy, irritable. Then the one that I have experienced and I tell people that I think we should be careful about is what happens to our body. When I'm very stressed to the limit, I have rashes on my body. So sometimes you go to the hospital and you have a stomach ache and they find nothing wrong. You are fatigued every time you are tired. Headaches, migraines. And then your mind, inability to concentrate. So if you work with machines and stress is overloaded, you can have problems. And sometimes those who are very stressed, even nightmares can occur when you are stressed. So we should be careful of some of these things. 4 areas: your body, your mind, your behavior, your emotions are affected when stress is overloaded, when you get to the stage where you are getting to burn out.
Wow, this is very deep. In fact, I really underestimated the topic. I didn't know that stress has got really all these broad areas. In fact, one thing which you mentioned which is very alarming is, you know, the part which affects even the marriage, you know, loss of sexual drive, you know, things like being irritable, whereby you always, you know, the least thing you're emotionally, you know, angry or really sad or you are really angry. And this is the area which I'm looking at. And you even mentioned sleeplessness. Let me ask, children, you know, childbirth, nursing children, does it really bring us some stress? Though we want to be, we are happy we have a child, but then in the nursing stage, is it connected to some level of stress? Can you say that?
Sometimes when women give birth, right after giving birth, we call it the blues. So I advise couples that right after birth, you know, when a woman is pregnant, there's a lot of hormonal changes. And after birth, the body is trying to come back to its normal state. And so I advise couples, this is the time that you, the husband, you have to go the extra mile and support the woman because the body is trying to readjust. She had something there, it's come out, and the baby is feeding at ungodly times. She can have stress. And some women have even gone to the stage where their mental health is affected. Some have found themselves in the mental hospital, okay? That the problem has gone from just a normal thing they can handle, and then it has gone to panic attacks, and sometimes then they have other things that affect them. Okay, so yes, it can. And I advise couples, men, please support your wives right after. It's very important. Very important.
All right. Thank you very much. I want to know if anybody has a question. In fact, we've really discussed a lot. Let me mention, in fact, our resource person have mentioned 3 areas which we have different types of, I mean, not the areas, but of course the type of stress. We have good stress called eustress, you know. This is just a bit of stress to make you work. You know, some people say they work better when they are under stress. You know, we've talked about that. Then bad stress, when the stress is too much. So that is called distressed. You know, you become distressed. And then we have the burnout. This is when it is beyond anything you can really handle. This is what leads to panic and, you know, anxiety and all that. So if you are working and you are realizing that you are finding yourself in these areas, this is the time to ask your question to our resource person. We'll be happy to have you ask your question to our resource person. So please, if you have a question, let us know. Right. So even as we wait for your question, we'll continue with the set of questions I have here for our resource person. The next thing we want to do is to talk about. Oh, okay. Somebody is having a question. Please go ahead. Oh, okay. Maybe I didn't hear right. Okay, sorry. We want to talk about, is it possible to completely avoid this bad stress? You know, what we call the distress. Is it possible to completely avoid it? especially in our, today's world?
I can imagine that some of us are still recovering from the COVID stress. So, if we are all believers online, or even those who are not believers, we know that the world is changing. And I tell people that it's not getting any easier. So this question, I would say for me, I think that we need to prepare ourselves. And as we go on, and I try to tell you, or we try to discuss the ways in which we can handle it, let's all take it very seriously, because we are in the world, we call it the VUCA world. VUCAR. We are in a VUCA world. That means that we are in a volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, and rapid world. Things change so rapidly. The knowledge you have today, tomorrow, it is different. And look at the knowledge our kids are having. Look at even how COVID challenged us. So this topic of stress, it's very important that we come to a realization of it, that the stress and distress is bound to happen. Even in the biblical days, some of the prophets of old went through it till they got depressed. Okay? So in a nutshell, if I would be bold enough, I would say there is no way about it. The world is becoming more complicated. But I have these 4 keys. It's generic that I say that you can become a hero, H-E-R-O, in this VUCA world. With the H means hope. E means efficacy. R means you must be resilient. And O means you must be optimistic. Hope is what allows you to still dream, plan, set goals, achieve them. Because if you are thinking about, I don't say life is short, I say life is long, so we should plan. Then efficacy means that have confidence in your ability to overcome the situations. Yes, the situations will come, but build a daily confidence. And resilience allows you to be tough, to recover from adversity. If a righteous man falls 7 times, you will rise up. Optimism, it allows you to maintain confidence in your future, to know that no, it's going to get brighter. And I like the song that we sang. There's nothing impossible for God. So this is the time that you must have an anchor that keeps your soul. What I tell people, whatever you trust in, I trust in the Almighty God. Put your anchor there. This is the time to have an anchor, because the storms will come. There will be a shaking. But where is your anchor? It's very important. So I say it is not possible that we can live without stress. The distress stage, you don't get there. Stress is there, but don't get to the distress stage. Yes.
Wow. Thank you. I was trying to note as quick as possible, but I think I lost one thing. You mentioned VUCA, which is the acronym for volatile, uncertain, ambiguous, and then the L. I didn't get the L. Please, what is the L?
It's VUCA, R. The R is a rapid world. So we have a
okay, VUCA. Okay, R.
VUCA. Volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, and a rapid world. Things change so rapidly in the world we live in now. Yes. Yes.
All right. Okay, I get it. Okay. And then when you came to the hero, you mentioned hope, efficacy, resilience, optimism. I got few for efficacy, resilience, and then optimistic. But then the hope, I didn't get any particular point on that. Did you mention something on hope? How would we handle hope?
Yes, hope is when you have hope, you dream, you plan, you set goals. Hope is that you have you're looking forward to something in the future for it to happen. Something good is going to happen. So then it gives you the chance to be able to plan and set goals.
Oh, great. I just want to know, most of us here are Christians, and we try to handle most of these things by just going to church. Do you think it really solves the problem, or do we need sometimes to look at things professionally? Can we just pray about everything instead of really seeking professional or maybe a real methodological way of handling it, rather than just going to church and thinking it will solve itself, or just praying about it?
I think that sometimes we make that mistake of thinking that a couple have issues and they say, let's pray. But sometimes you need to really seek counsel. For example, nowadays there's something I preach to couples. And I give that an example and I'll move on. For example, you have a couple who have this issue of respect. This person say you don't respect, you don't respect. The question is, what is respect to you? What is respect to the other person? You don't love me. A young couple who have married, love may be, for the wife, maybe you buy me a cloth, you buy me this. But as you go on and you give birth, love to your wife may not be the cloth again. It could be just listening to me. It could be just coming home early. So these definitions of love, respect, even in our marriages change, and it has become a big bone of contention. This issue of, you are not submissive enough, you don't respect, you don't love me. What is the definition? The same way, you can't just deal with, so when couples are dealing with this and they just want to pray about it, it's difficult. You have to have somebody who would help you people to manage this. The same way, stress cannot just go away just with prayer, because some of the ways or the techniques is even in the Bible, how to deal with it physically. So yes, I have scriptures that I'll give at the end of it, but there are ways. I quote Mary Engelbreit, or Bright. She says, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change the way you think about it. So stress management is actually this phrase, that you find ways or make efforts to control, reduce, learn to tolerate threats. So yes, there are ways of dealing with stress. The first thing is that identify what stresses you. What are the things that stress you? That's the first stage, or the place you get to, then you know that you are trying to handle your own stress or manage it. Not handle, but manage it. Is it things, normally for me, because I am somebody who likes things to be very certain, when something is unpredictable, I don't know the next day, I get very stressed. There are people like that. Pressure, meeting deadlines. And another thing that as a wife I can identify with is when you are home with the children, they are screaming, you are stressed, hey, they will hurt themselves. So that thing also stresses me. It may not stress somebody else. You also look at your psychological makeup. There are various ways of describing type A, type B. Then we have the sanguine, the phlegmatic, the melancholic, the choleric. All these temperaments, there are tendencies. For example, if you are a choleric, you are somebody who can be called sort of a workaholic, okay? You are impatient. I don't like putting people in a box or profiling them, but these are the categories. So if you're a choleric, know that one of your struggles will be that you can be a bit intolerant and impatient. Though you have strengths such that you are self-reliant, you are positive, it can affect your stress response. It can increase your stress. The same way, let's take somebody who is a sanguine. These are people who, you know, a bit overly emotional about trivial things, small things, then they are hurt, and it can affect your stress level. Though you have this strength of being very empathetic, okay? Then we take the phlegmatic. There are people who are a bit indecisive. They procrastinate. Today I'll do it, tomorrow I'll do it, the next day I'll do it. It can bring you to the stage where now you are under stress. So your personality has a way of also impacting on your stress response.